Have you ever had a moment when the ground seemed to fall out from underneath you? I have. The rug pulled out from underneath you is another example. You get your breath knocked out of you, you're dizzy, and you can't even see straight. I was juggling multiple jobs. I was working full time as a realtor, running a business with my husband, and I also had a part-time job, trying to make ends meet in that season of our life. I was truly overworked, stressed, fatigued, exhausted, but I didn't stop. Why? Because fear told me that slowing down wasn't an option. Have you ever felt like that? Then one day, I remember I was called into the office and I sat there in stunned silence with the words ringing in my ear, with coldness gripping my heart. And they said, "We have to let you go." That cold just tightened around my heart, and my heart just sank. And my mind started spinning, and I thought, what will my family think? And we're already so tight. What are we going to do? I felt small. I felt defeated. I felt unwanted. But God was about to do something that I couldn't see yet. For weeks after, I wrestled with questions. Weeks, it was over a year. Where do I go from here? What do I do? I spent too much time crying and mornings dragging myself out of bed, wondering, I know you've got a plan for me, God. What am I supposed to do? And I was so busy trying to figure out what I was supposed to do that when I finally got still, my mind got still, and I was really ready to begin to listen. That's when I began to hear. That's when I stopped striving and started listening. And started listening to that still small voice that only he can say, and began to listen to him speak to my heart, begin to give me clarity. And one of the biggest things is to stop worrying about what I'm supposed to do and focus on who I want to be. So if I stayed in this state of fear and paralyzing and beating myself up and doubt and worry, is that the kind of person that Donna wants to be? What will my kids say? What will my grandkids say if I stay stuck, stay in this place of paralyzing, just surviving, just struggling, doubting myself? No, I said, that isn't who I'm called to be. That isn't who I really am. I'm letting fear distort, circumstances distort who I am. Maybe it isn't a job for you. Maybe it's something else. But we all have things, it's fear-based, that distort the image and the view of who we really see ourselves as being. And I didn't want to be that person. So who did I want to be? I wanted to be resilient. I wanted to be making a difference in the world. And I knew I was supposed to help people and that I was good at it. But how could I do it in a way that was thriving and transformational. And so that's when I began to listen differently. Instead of worrying about doing, I began to talk about being. And if you've worked with me for any time, you know you've heard that phrase. So, what I've come to learn about fear is we don't often take action. Humans just don't really like it. We don't often take actions unless we are forced to. A loss or a setback or a health scare becomes a catalyst we didn't want, but sometimes we desperately need. Our thoughts create our reality. And I was fatigued, overworked, frustrated, not thinking good thoughts about myself, my circumstances, or during that time in my life. And I have to own it. I wasn't. So sometimes things happen and can always be for our good when we learn how to transform it. Losing that job, I say now, was one of the worst days and best days of my life. And man, it didn't feel like it. In the silence, in the quiet, I began to find clarity. And I realized I was chasing roles that weren't aligned with God's purpose for me. It wasn't really what he has. They were giving into fear, and I chose to let fear lead me on what I needed to do, just thriving and not thriving, but striving. It's amazing when we think how fear can impact us. And I'd like to share a story about Kate. Kate's story mirrors mine in so many ways. She was a successful professional and she worked a good amount of hours, meeting every deadline, sacrificing herself for her job. She believed the more she worked, the more secure she would be. But under the surface, her actions were motivated by fear. It was like her silent driver with the whip. I've been whipped with that whip. How about you? That silent thing on the back of your head, on your back, propelling you to do more. The fear of failure, the fear of letting people down, the fear of never being good enough. I need to keep doing it to prove it. And one day, the unthinkable happened for Kate. She was called into the office and let go. Kate felt like her world was over. She said to me, I feel like I've lost everything. I looked into her eyes and said, you haven't lost everything. You've lost what was holding you back. And together, let's start building a vision for what could be. What Kate did next changed everything. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, we began to work together. And during our time together, we uncovered those deeper fears, what the roots were, so that we could pull the roots out and we could find new truths to replace those fears and become to live from a place of truth instead of fear. I helped her reconnect with God, her God-given identity, who he says she, who God says she is, and her vision for her. And Kate went from feeling kicked to the curb, as I call this video, to discovering what was really a buried passion in her heart and how to bring it about by learning the spiritual intelligence truths and laws that are in place, the gifts that were in her, and help her to create a life that she never really imagined was possible. Today, Kate is thriving and she is doing work that is aligning with her faith and her values. She's not surviving anymore. She's thriving with peace and confidence and joy by putting fear in its rightful place under her feet, allowing her to be led by the Spirit, not by circumstances, not by what people say, not other people's opinion, but being led by the Spirit. God's kids know his voice. And when we learn to be led by the Spirit, everything changes. But there's so many voices, so many different things. And so many times, fear feels like it's logical. It's us being wise, doesn't it? Fear sounds like it's wisdom. And so we don't need to be afraid to learn how to listen to the truth. Fear drives us to fear failure and rejection and change and never being enough. Fear says, you need to play it safe. Don't take risk. What if, and don't take any challenges. You need to just do this. There's risk no matter what you do. Staying in fear is huge risk and it reaps rewards, a crop, a harvest that you do not want. But faith also has a crop. And when you learn the laws, and the spiritual intelligence gifts that are in you, faith never fails. With God on your side, all things are possible. So let's turn fear around and turn it into a tool. Acknowledge what you're afraid of and write it down. This is what I'm afraid of. Ask the question, if that happened, what's the worst thing that could happen from that? Put fear in its place. And then ask this, what is God's promises? What is God's word? What is a promise? What do you want to believe instead about that fear? Let's talk failure. The worst case scenario is I fail. I mess up. It doesn't go right. That's what I'm afraid of, and that's the worst case scenario, whatever that looks like for you. What is God's promise instead? He promised to be with you always, never leave you. With God on your side, you can't be defeated. He promised to love you. He promised to always be with you, to take care of you and provide for you. And when we've learned to really believe it and not have a double-minded, things begin to shift. And then lean into prayer and surrender of your fears. And ask God through this, what are you trying to show me? What can I learn? Where can my perspective shift from fear to faith? Where can fear stop controlling me? All of this is possible, just like for Kate. And if you are ready to stop letting fear win and start living in alignment with God's purpose for you and what He has for you, let's talk. Schedule a free consultation. Let's discover, like Kate did, be bold enough to take action. And let's talk. Using those 4 sets of steps that I did to process the fear. You don't have to wait till you're kicked to the curb to rise. God has more for you. Wherever you are, whatever you've achieved, I can guarantee you that there is more. And I would love to help you get there. One of the biggest transformations that made through all of this is I hired a coach. I was fabulous at DIYing it and figuring it out on my own. If I just put my head nose to the grindstone long enough, I could figure it out. And I found myself flat on my back, crying, and was ready for a coach to take me through the steps to make it easier. And with my coach and God as my teacher, all things are possible. I know the pain of losing your footing. I know the pain of feeling like words I don't say. But I also know the freedom on the other side. And when you let God lead the way, we can turn fear into a catalyst. We can turn it for good. We can laugh in the face of it. Let's do this together. Schedule your consultation today because I believe in you. Until I see you back here again or you're listening to my voice, remember, I believe in you. This is Donna with Vibrant Living International. Bye for now.